I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Right now, as you settle in, your brain is already preparing to do one of the most extraordinary things it knows how to do: to dream. You'll discover why excitement ends the most aware dreams we've ever known, and understand why your sleeping mind is far more powerful than you imagined. Welcome to Sleepy Science Facts. Wherever you are right now, perhaps lying in the quiet dark, feeling your body grow still and soft, allow yourself this particular kind of peace. We'll journey through 100 psychology facts about lucid dreams, from the moment awareness flickers on inside a sleeping mind, to the delicate neuroscience of staying inside a dream, to the strange and tender science of why excitement always wakes us up. This thoughtful journey through the dreaming mind builds bridges between searching minds who wander at night. Your gentle support, a like, subscribe, or a quiet share, creates a pathway for more curious souls to discover this peaceful space and brings us closer to protect it, one sleepy soul at a time. Your presence here matters deeply. Let yourself settle completely here. Feel your jaw unclench, your breath deepen naturally. You can let these thoughts drift past without holding them. Sense that soothing heaviness enveloping you, like your consciousness slowly dimming its brightness, thoughts dissolving into the peaceful fog of approaching sleep, safe and undisturbed, with nothing left to do. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. You're floating where memories rest safely in gentle darkness. Let your mind merge with infinite peace. And now we begin. Every night, your brain creates a world. While your body lies perfectly still, your mind constructs scenes so vivid that your nervous system responds to them as though they were real. Heart rate shifts, eyes move, muscles twitch. The dreaming brain is not resting. It is performing one of the most metabolically active states known to neuroscience. Dreams are not decorations on sleep. They are its most remarkable feature. Most people dream every single night, whether they remember it or not. In a typical night of sleep, you will pass through 4 to 6 complete sleep cycles. Each cycle lasts roughly 90 minutes. The longest and most vivid dreaming happens in the final cycles of the night, which is why the dreams you remember most tend to feel like they occurred just before you woke up. Lucid dreaming is the experience of becoming aware that you are dreaming while still inside the dream. The word lucid comes from the Latin for clear, and that clarity, that sudden knowledge that the world around you was built by your own sleeping mind, is one of the most unusual states of consciousness a human being can enter. It is both dreaming and waking, happening at the same time. The scientific study of lucid dreaming has a longer history than most people know. In 1975, British psychologist Keith Hearn, working at the sleep laboratory of the University of Hull in England, conducted the first verified laboratory recording of a lucid dream. His subject, Alan Worsley, had agreed to signal the moment he became lucid inside the dream by moving his eyes in a specific pattern. Those deliberate eye movements were captured on the electroculograph, the eye movement recorder, producing a clear zigzag signal that Hearn could see with his own eyes. Not a dream, not a chance movement, a message, sent deliberately from inside sleep. Lucid dreaming occurs almost exclusively during a specific phase of sleep called REM, which stands for rapid eye movement. During REM, the brain enters a state of high electrical activity. Brainwave patterns begin to resemble waking more closely than they do deep sleep. It is as though the brain is running a vivid simulation, with most of its processing power still switched on. During REM sleep, something unusual happens to the body. The muscles of the arms and legs are actively paralyzed by a mechanism in the brainstem. This is called REM atonia. The body becomes temporarily unable to move. Scientists believe this evolved as a protective feature, so that the sleeping body does not physically act out the movements happening inside the dream. Without REM atonia, dreaming could be profoundly disruptive. The part of the brain most associated with self-awareness is called the prefrontal cortex. It sits just behind your forehead. During ordinary sleep, this region becomes significantly less active. But during lucid dreaming, neuroimaging research shows that activity in the prefrontal cortex increases, sometimes approaching levels seen during waking. This reactivation appears to be what allows the dreamer to recognize their own dreaming state. Research from the Sleep Laboratory at Frankfurt University, published in 2009, found that this frontal reactivation was accompanied by shifts in brain oscillation patterns in the frontal and frontolateral regions, suggesting that something resembling waking-like awareness was appearing inside sleep. A separate 2012 study using brain imaging confirmed similar patterns of frontal reactivation, including increased activity in the regions associated with self-reflection and metacognition. Researchers note that the precise nature of this frontal activation continues to be refined as newer analysis methods develop, but the core finding, that lucid dreaming reactivates self-awareness, circuits normally quiet during sleep, has proven consistent across multiple laboratories. During lucid dreaming, the brain does something that deserves quiet attention. It maintains the full visual and emotional richness of the dreaming state, the moving scenes, the characters, the narrative, the feelings, while simultaneously allowing a part of itself to step back and observe. This is the quality researchers call metacognition, the mind monitoring its own processes. In ordinary dreams, this capacity is almost entirely absent. In lucid dreaming, it reawakens. The dreamer becomes, in a precise neural sense, both the story and the one who knows it is a story. Not everyone lucid dreams with the same frequency. Studies suggest that roughly 55% of people have experienced at least one lucid dream in their lifetime. But regular lucid dreamers, those who experience it frequently, at least once a month, make up a much smaller group, estimated at around 20 to 23% of the general population. For most people, lucid dreaming is a rare gift rather than a nightly visit, something that arrives unexpectedly, lingers briefly, and leaves a trace that ordinary waking cannot quite explain. Children and young adults tend to lucid dream more frequently than older adults. Some researchers believe this is connected to the fact that younger brains spend more total time in REM sleep, and that the developing prefrontal cortex may interact with dream states in ways that differ from fully mature neural architecture. The relationship between age and lucid dreaming frequency is still being studied, but the pattern across populations is consistent. There are two main pathways into a lucid dream. The first is called dream-initiated lucid dreaming, where you enter a dream in the usual way and then become aware mid-dream that you are dreaming. The second is called wake-initiated lucid dreaming, where awareness carries unbroken from the waking state directly into a dream, without losing consciousness in between. The second method is rarer and requires significant practice, but it produces some of the most vivid lucid experiences reported. One of the most widely practiced techniques for inducing lucid dreams is called the mnemonic induction of lucid dreams, developed by psychologist Stephen LaBerge at Stanford University in the 1980s. The method involves a simple mental habit. Before falling asleep, you repeat an intention to recognize that you are dreaming. Over time, this prospective memory cue can begin to surface during the dream itself, triggering that quiet flash of awareness that changes everything. Another technique involves reality testing. Throughout the day, a person practicing this method asks themselves a simple question: am I dreaming? They check their surroundings for signs of inconsistency. They read a sentence of text, look away, and read it again. Because text in dreams almost always changes on second reading. They count the fingers on their hand, because dream hands often have the wrong number. Practiced regularly, this habit of questioning can begin to carry into the dream state itself. The dreaming brain makes logical errors that the waking brain would instantly notice. Clocks show impossible times. Faces belong to people who should not be together in the same place. Architecture shifts in ways that defy physics. The waking mind would flag these anomalies immediately, but the dreaming mind, with its prefrontal cortex quieted, tends to accept them without question. The goal of reality testing is to train the brain to notice these inconsistencies, even while dreaming. The dreaming mind also has a powerful tendency toward emotional compliance. Whatever the emotional tone of a dream, the dreaming self tends to match it without resistance. If the dream generates fear, the dreamer feels fear. If it generates warmth and wonder, those feelings arise naturally. The prefrontal cortex, when it gently reawakens inside a lucid dream, can interrupt this automatic compliance, allowing the dreamer to step back from the emotion and observe it rather than be swept along by it. There is growing evidence that lucid dreaming involves communication between regions of the brain that do not normally interact strongly during REM sleep. Brain research using EEG has found patterns of enhanced coordination between frontal and parietal regions during lucid dreaming, regions associated with self-monitoring and metacognition. This long-range communication appears to be a signature of the brain, watching its own dreaming, the way a witness watches from a quiet distance. Some researchers have begun to explore whether it is possible to communicate with a lucid dreamer in real time, from outside the dream. In 2021, a study published in the journal Current Biology demonstrated that lucid dreamers could receive simple mathematical questions and respond with deliberate eye movements and facial muscle signals while remaining asleep. This two-way communication was documented by 4 independent laboratories working simultaneously, one at Northwestern University in the United States, one in Germany, one in France, and one in the Netherlands, lending the finding a weight that a single team could not have achieved alone. The term for these experiments is interactive dreaming. What makes the results remarkable is not just that communication occurred, but that dreamers incorporated the questions into the narrative of their dreams. One dreamer reported that a mathematical question seemed to arrive as a voice from somewhere within the dream. They did not experience it as a signal from the outside world. Their sleeping mind had translated it into dreamlike imagery. And then they answered it correctly. Something in sleep was listening. Lucid dreaming is not the same thing as ordinary dreaming with a feeling of control. Many people report vivid dreams in which they make choices, but they are not lucid because they never know they are dreaming. True lucidity requires metacognition, the awareness of one's own mental state. The feeling of dreaming is there, and behind it, quietly watching, is the knowledge, I am the one who is dreaming this. The relationship between lucid dreaming and memory is complex. Despite being aware inside the dream, lucid dreamers still face the same challenge all dreamers do upon waking. Dream memories fade within minutes. The transition from sleep to waking appears to disrupt the consolidation of dream content. Even the most vivid lucid dream can dissolve in seconds if the dreamer does not immediately begin recalling and narrating it. Dream journals kept beside the bed have become the most consistently recommended tool for preserving what was found inside. Lucid dreaming appears to activate the brain's motor simulation systems in ways that have attracted the attention of rehabilitation researchers. Several studies have found that people who practiced physical skills inside lucid dreams, specific finger movements, balance exercises, sport technique, showed measurable improvements in those skills after waking. The motor cortex, it turns out, does not entirely distinguish between physically performing an action and vividly imagining it with awareness. Practice inside a dream is, in some real sense, practice. Musicians, athletes, and artists have long reported using the dream state for creative work. But lucid dreaming offers something ordinary dreaming cannot: the ability to direct that work with intention. A lucid dreamer can choose to pick up an instrument, choose to play a difficult passage, choose to notice what is wrong and gently correct it. The body does not move, but something in the neural record of the movement is already being written. For some people, lucid dreaming has been explored as a tool for reducing nightmares. In a condition called imagery rehearsal therapy, used for people who experience recurring distressing dreams, patients rehearse modified versions of their nightmares while awake, changing the ending, changing the tone, so that the revised version begins to appear during sleep. Lucid dreaming takes this a step further. Instead of rehearsing outside the dream, the person can intervene inside the dream itself, choosing to change the narrative rather than be overwhelmed by it. A 2024 review examining controlled studies on lucid dreaming and nightmare frequency found moderate but consistent evidence that lucid dreaming interventions particularly when combined with imagery rehearsal therapy, reduced the frequency and intensity of nightmare episodes in participants who experienced recurring, distressing dreams. The mechanism is not entirely clear, but researchers believe that the metacognitive capacity to recognize the dreamer's dream diffuses some of the emotional charge that makes nightmares psychologically difficult. And yet, lucid dreaming is not easy to sustain. Even experienced lucid dreamers face the same challenge. Again and again, the dream becomes unstable. The images begin to dissolve. The edges of the scene blur and fade. And most often, most reliably, most profoundly, what destabilizes the dream and ends it is the thing you would least expect. Not fear, not confusion, excitement. The question at the heart of tonight's journey is a simple one. Why does joy wake us up? Let's pause here and notice your body. As you breathe out slowly, appreciate each tiny cell inside. A heart beating steadily, lungs filling and releasing on their own. A brain sorting and settling, quietly and without effort. All of it moving forward, without needing you to ask. Notice the gentle sensations on your skin, in your muscles, along your spine. You are a complete ecosystem, diverse, self-balancing, working in the most profound silence imaginable. Now, we continue. The instability of lucid dreams is one of their most documented features. Researchers who study lucid dreaming consistently report that the average lucid dream lasts only a few minutes, often between 2 and 5 minutes, before the dreamer either wakes up or loses lucidity and drifts back into ordinary dreaming. Maintaining the state requires active effort. The moment that effort becomes something else, something louder, something more urgent, the dream tends to end. One of the earliest and most consistent observations in lucid dreaming research is that strong emotion disrupts the state. Stephen LaBerge, who conducted systematic studies of lucid dreaming at Stanford throughout the 1980s and 1990s, noted that emotional arousal, particularly positive emotional arousal, including excitement and elation, was among the most reliable triggers for involuntary waking. The dreamer does not choose to wake up. The arousal simply brings waking with it. To understand why, we need to revisit what REM sleep actually is. During REM, the brain maintains a very specific physiological balance. The body is deeply relaxed. Certain brainstem nuclei that regulate arousal, particularly those involving norepinephrine and serotonin, are at their lowest activity of the entire 24-hour cycle. This is believed to be one of the conditions that allows REM sleep to persist. The arousal system is, in a sense, temporarily settled to its quietest setting. Excitement, the feeling, is not just a thought. It is a physiological event. When you feel excited, your sympathetic nervous system activates. Adrenaline and norepinephrine begin to rise. Heart rate increases. Breathing shifts. The brain becomes more alert. These are the biological signatures of arousal. They are also, almost precisely, the opposite of the internal conditions that sustain REM sleep. When excitement rises inside a dream, it is setting in motion the very chemistry that ends the sleeping state. Neurologically, the prefrontal cortex, which is already unusually active during lucid dreaming, that appears to be particularly sensitive to emotional surges. Some researchers describe lucid dreaming as a kind of neural balance point. The prefrontal cortex must be active enough to generate self-awareness, but not so active that it triggers the full arousal response of waking. Excitement pushes the system past that threshold, and once the threshold is crossed, the brain does not return easily to sleep. Experienced lucid dreamers develop specific techniques for managing this. One of the most widely used is called dream spinning. The dreamer spins their body rapidly inside the dream, which appears to stabilize the dream environment and modulate the sense of arousal. Another technique involves rubbing the hands together, generating tactile sensation, which some researchers believe anchors the dreamer's sensory processing within the dream rather than allowing attention to shift outward toward waking. These are workarounds for the same underlying challenge. The excited brain wants to be awake. Another approach is deliberate emotional regulation. When a lucid dreamer feels excitement beginning to rise, when the dream becomes beautiful or surprising, or when something extraordinary appears, they learn to deliberately slow the breath, to soften the internal response, to meet what they see with calm interest rather than elation. This is not suppression. It is the same principle as mindfulness, allowing the experience without being pulled into reactivity by it. The paradox of lucid dreaming is that the more urgently you want it, the more you destabilize it. This paradox has a name in contemplative traditions long before it had a name in neuroscience. Buddhist meditation texts describe a phenomenon called sinking and scattering, in which awareness either collapses into unconsciousness or becomes overly active and loses its resting point. Lucid dreaming researchers, approaching the same phenomenon from a neuroscientific direction, arrived at a strikingly similar description. The state requires a middle activation, neither too dull nor too aroused. Calmness, in this context, is not passive. It is a form of precision. There is also a cognitive dimension to why excitement ends lucid dreams. When a dreamer realizes they are dreaming, one of the first impulses for almost all new lucid dreamers is to become excited about being lucid. This excitement is self-referential. The dreamer is excited about the state of dreaming itself. But excitement about the dream functions identically at the neural level to any other excitement. It sends the same signals. It activates the same arousal pathways, and it ends the dream in the same way. Experienced practitioners describe the goal not as experiencing lucid dreams with excitement, but as experiencing them with wonder. Wonder, in psychological research, is associated with a specific emotional signature. It is characterized by awe, openness, and reduced self-focus. Studies by psychologist Dacher Keltner and colleagues have found that wonder tends to slow internal physiological arousal rather than accelerate it. It creates expansion without urgency. It is, in a sense, the emotion that keeps the door to the dream open, while excitement closes it. The distinction between wonder and excitement is worth resting with for a moment. Excitement is directed outward and forward, toward what might happen, toward what you might do, toward the possibilities the lucid state offers. Wonder is simply present. It rests in what is, without rushing toward anything else. In a lucid dream, the difference plays out in real time. Excitement destabilizes. Wonder sustains. The brain, it turns out, I can tell the difference. Sleep researchers have also noted that transitions between sleep stages, the moments when the brain moves from one phase to another, are particularly vulnerable to disruption by arousal. Lucid dreaming tends to occur during later REM periods, which are already lighter and more easily interrupted. Any internal signal that raises the brain's arousal level during this time has a higher than average chance of completing the transition into wakefulness. Excitement is simply the most consistent of those signals. There is a gentle irony at the center of lucid dreaming. The very qualities that make a lucid dream worth having, the vividness, the beauty, the freedom, the sense that anything is possible, are precisely the qualities most likely to generate the excitement that ends it. The more beautiful the dream, the more the dreamer wants to reach for it. And reaching, in the neural sense, is already a step toward waking. Some neurologists have proposed that this phenomenon reflects a fundamental tension in human consciousness. Our brains are evolved to respond to remarkable stimuli with increased arousal. For most of our evolutionary history, something remarkable was either an opportunity or a threat, and both demanded wakefulness. A brain that stayed completely calm in the face of something extraordinary would have been at a disadvantage. The lucid dreamer's challenge is, in a sense, the collision of an ancient survival instinct with the very modern desire to remain consciously aware inside a dream. And yet, it is possible. People do sustain lucid dreams for 10, 15, even 20 minutes. They do navigate extraordinary dream environments with calm attention. They do practice and improve, and find over time that the threshold for involuntary waking rises. The brain, it appears, can be trained to maintain the balance, not because the tension disappears, but because the skill of resting within it becomes more practiced, more natural, more familiar. You're still here, still listening, thoughts still flickering like candlelight in a still room. Just notice where your mind is right now. Don't judge it. Just notice. We're exploring consciousness itself, the very thing doing the exploring right now. Strange, beautiful, and perfectly calm. Let's drift onward together. The brain regions involved in lucid dreaming overlap significantly with those associated with meditation. Neuroimaging studies of long-term meditators show structural and functional differences in the prefrontal cortex, the anterior cingulate cortex, and the insular, regions also implicated in the metacognitive awareness that defines lucid dreaming. This overlap has prompted researchers to ask whether meditation practice makes lucid dreaming more accessible, and early evidence suggests that it does. A 2019 study published in the journal Mindfulness found that participants with regular mindfulness meditation practice reported significantly higher rates of spontaneous lucid dreaming compared to non-meditators. The researchers proposed that meditation trains the very capacity, the ability to observe one's own mental states without being absorbed into them, that makes it possible to notice, even while dreaming, that one is in a dream. The watcher becomes more practiced, and so the watching persists. Even in sleep, the relationship between waking consciousness and dreaming consciousness is one of the deepest unresolved questions in neuroscience. Some theorists propose that all conscious experience exists on a continuum, that dreaming and waking are not binary opposites, but different configurations of the same underlying neural architecture. Lucid dreaming, on this view, is simply a configuration in which waking-like reflective awareness coexists with the visual and emotional richness of the dreaming state. Not two things at once, but one system in an unusual arrangement. The neuroscience of the default mode network adds another layer to this picture. The default mode network is a set of brain regions that become active during self-referential thought. When we think about ourselves, our memories, or futur, our relationships. During ordinary REM sleep, the default mode network is active. During lucid dreaming, it appears to remain active, but is joined by additional frontal regions associated with directed attention. The dreaming self is present. But so, now, is the observing self. Dreams also involve the hippocampus, the brain's key structure for memory formation and spatial navigation. During REM, the hippocampus appears to replay recently learned information, consolidating it into longer-term storage. Some sleep researchers believe this replay function is partially responsible for the narrative qualities of dreams, the strange recombination of recent experience, emotion, and older memory into something that feels, in the moment, like a story. The dreaming brain is, in part, an editor, sorting, selecting, weaving. For lucid dreamers, the hippocampus introduces an interesting quality because the dream narrative is being actively constructed from memory. The dreamer who becomes lucid is simultaneously embedded in a memory-generated story and aware that it is being generated. This awareness does not stop the construction. Dreams continue unfolding even when the dreamer is fully lucid. What changes is only the dreamer's relationship to the unfolding. They can observe it, gently redirect it, or simply rest inside it. Watching. The role of acetylcholine in REM sleep has been studied for decades, and it remains central to understanding what makes dreaming different from other sleep states. Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter associated with cortical arousal and memory formation. During REM sleep, cholinergic neurons become highly active. Some researchers believe this acetylcholine surge is what gives dreams their vividness, their emotional intensity, and their narrative depth. It also appears to be a factor in the reactivation of the prefrontal cortex that may be associated with lucid dreaming. Studies using substances that increase acetylcholine levels in the brain have consistently shown elevated rates of lucid dreaming in research settings. This has led some researchers to explore the acetylcholine pathway as a potential area for understanding lucid dreaming induction. The evidence remains preliminary, and the use of any such substances carries real considerations. But the pharmacological pathway into lucid dreaming has opened a window into the chemistry of self-aware sleep. There is, within the study of lucid dreaming, a growing area of interest in what happens after the lucid dreamer wakes. Researchers have noted that people who practice lucid dreaming regularly often report changes in their waking relationship to consciousness, increased capacity for metacognition, greater ease with uncertainty, a more flexible relationship to self. Whether these changes are caused by the lucid dreaming practice itself, or whether certain types of minds are both drawn to lucid dreaming and inclined toward these qualities, is still being gently investigated. Halfway through tonight's journey, the shape of the answer is becoming clearer. Excitement ends lucid dreams, not because the dreaming mind is fragile, but because it is, in a profound way, honest. It cannot sustain the arousal of excitement while simultaneously maintaining the stillness that sleep requires. The dreamer who learns to stay is not the one who suppresses feeling. It is the one who discovers a different relationship to feeling altogether, acquiert attention, rather than a grasping one. And that, perhaps, is the oldest lesson sleep has ever offered. Let each breath guide you to realize time is yours, a separate stream that only you are living. While the dreaming brain continues to spin its worlds, expand its stories, change its landscapes. This second, you are breathing and listening, is unique. Cherish the present moment, knowing that right now, your time is unlike anything else in the universe. And we continue drifting. The dreaming brain does not create randomness. Even the most unusual, shifting, apparently nonsensical dream has underlying patterns, emotional patterns, narrative patterns, patterns rooted in memory and association. Researchers studying the content of dreams across large populations have found that certain themes appear widely across cultures and across centuries. Being chased, falling, flying, arriving unprepared, encountering familiar faces in unfamiliar places. These patterns suggest that dreaming is not chaos. It is a particular kind of order. Flying dreams are among the most commonly reported and most treasured dream experiences across cultures. For many lucid dreamers, the ability to fly voluntarily is one of the first things they seek when they realize they are dreaming. The sensation of flight in a lucid dream is described consistently: a feeling of lightness, freedom, effortlessness. The body in waking does not know this feeling, but the brain, which stores movement patterns from memory and imagination, can construct it entirely from within. The emotional content of lucid dreams differs from ordinary dreams in a consistent way. Studies show that lucid dreams tend to involve more positive emotion than non-lucid dreams. This is partly because the dreamer can redirect distressing content. Recognizing it as a dream softens some of its weight, but it also appears to reflect something deeper. The presence of conscious awareness inside the dream introduces a quality of equanimity. The watcher is calmer than the dreamer who does not know they are watching. There is a spectrum of lucidity, At one end, there are moments of partial lucidity, a brief, hazy recognition that something about the experience is dreamlike, which fades before it can be acted upon. At the other end, there are fully lucid dreams in which the dreamer has complete clarity, detailed memory of their waking life, and the capacity for intentional action within the dream. Most lucid dreams fall somewhere between these extremes, and the degree of lucidity can shift even within a single dream episode. The visual quality of a lucid dream is often described as intensely clear, more vivid, more saturated, more detailed than ordinary dreaming, and in some accounts, more vivid even than waking perception. This heightened visual richness appears to be related to the elevated neural activity in the visual cortex during REM sleep, combined with the absence of the filtering and prediction systems that shape waking visual experience. In a dream, the visual system is both generating and perceiving the image. There is no external reality to modulate it. Some lucid dreamers report that the architecture of the dream world, its internal logic, its spatial consistency, its narrative coherence, deepens with practice. Early lucid dreams tend to be brief and shifting, with environments that change unpredictably. With experience, the dreamer's relationship to the dream steadies, and the dream world becomes more consistent, more navigable. Whether this reflects actual changes in neural processing during dreaming, or simply improved metacognitive skill, or both, is a question still open in the literature. Dream characters, the people who populate the dreaming world, are a source of particular fascination. In lucid dreams, dreamers have reported engaging in extended conversations with dream characters, asking them questions, receiving answers they did not consciously generate. Some researchers interpret this as evidence that dream characters are autonomous creations of the unconscious, expressing content that the waking mind has not yet processed. Others are more careful, noting that the sense of autonomy may itself be a construction of the dreaming mind. One recurring observation across lucid dreamers is that dream characters often resist the dreamer's attempts to direct them. Even in full lucidity, even with the clearest intention, dream characters can behave unexpectedly, say things the dreamer did not anticipate. This resistance is interpreted by some as evidence that the dreaming mind is generating content from regions not accessible to conscious direction, that there are layers of processing happening below the level that lucidity illuminates. The sense of time inside a lucid dream is another area of quiet inquiry. Subjectively, lucid dreams often feel much longer than they are. A dream that lasts 3 minutes of clock time may feel like 30 minutes of experience. This distortion appears related to the unusually rich and compressed nature of dream processing, in which the brain generates densely layered narrative sequences rapidly. Time, inside a lucid dream, moves to the rhythm of meaning rather than the rhythm of seconds. The relationship between lucid dreaming and creativity has been explored in multiple studies. Several investigations found that people who engage in regular lucid dreaming show elevated scores on measures of divergent thinking, the capacity to generate multiple, varied solutions to an open-ended problem. The proposed mechanism is that lucid dreaming trains the mind to hold unusual combinations of experience, to navigate unfamiliar environments with flexibility, and to maintain awareness across transitions that the ordinary mind would not survive without losing its thread. Across cultures and throughout history, the concept of the aware dream has appeared under different names and within different frameworks. In ancient Tibet, a practice called dream yoga was developed within Tibetan Buddhist traditions, involving techniques for maintaining awareness during the dream state as part of a broader contemplative path. In various indigenous traditions around the world, the intentional dream was treated as a portal to insight, healing, or guidance. Modern neuroscience arrived at the same phenomenon from a completely different direction and found that what the contemplatives had described was real. The overlap between lucid dreaming research and consciousness science has become more pronounced in recent years. The hard problem of consciousness, why and how physical processes in the brain give rise to subjective experience, is one of the deepest unsolved questions in science. Lucid dreaming offers a particular angle on this problem. It is a state in which subjective experience is clearly present, clearly reported, and yet produced by a brain that is largely disconnected from external reality. The dreaming mind is pure interiority, watching itself. Some philosophers of mind have proposed that lucid dreaming challenges the intuitive distinction between reality and imagination. In a fully lucid dream, the dreamer has rich sensory experience, emotional experience, and narrative experience, all of which, in the moment of their occurrence, are as vivid as any waking experience. The knowledge that they are generated rather than externally received does not diminish their presence. This has led some thinkers to ask what it means, ultimately, to call any experience real. For people working with psychological difficulty, the potential of lucid dreaming as a complement to therapeutic work is beginning to be taken seriously in clinical research. Beyond nightmare reduction, there are preliminary studies exploring lucid dreaming alongside trauma, processing, and anxiety work. The ability to enter a difficult emotional experience with awareness, to face what the dreaming mind presents without being overwhelmed by it, has parallels with several established psychological approaches. A 2023 review in the journal Frontiers in Psychology examined the current state of clinical evidence for lucid dreaming interventions and concluded that while the methodological quality of existing studies varies, there is sufficient evidence to justify larger, more careful trials. The authors noted that the combination of accessibility and the particular properties of the lucid state, the ability to engage with emotionally charged material within the frame of knowing it is a dream, makes it a genuinely thoughtful area of therapeutic inquiry. The question of control inside a lucid dream is more nuanced than it first appears. Many new lucid dreamers assume that lucidity automatically confers the ability to control everything about the dream, to summon any environment, any person, any experience. In practice, this is rarely what happens. Experienced lucid dreamers tend to describe a different relationship, less about control, more about collaboration. The dream continues to generate, and the dreamer learns to navigate and gently influence it, rather than dictate it. The concept of false awakening is closely related to lucid dreaming. A false awakening occurs when the dreamer believes they have woken up, gets out of bed, moves through familiar spaces, but is still dreaming. For lucid dreamers, false awakenings are both a challenge and an opportunity. The challenge is that lucidity can be lost in the transition. When the dreamer believes they are now in the real world, the opportunity is that false awakenings themselves can be recognized as dreams, and a new layer of awareness opens. Some lucid dreamers report nested false awakenings, waking within a dream into another dream, only to recognize that the second waking was also a dream. These experiences blur the subjective boundary between layers of consciousness in ways that are deeply unfamiliar and, for some, philosophically thought-provoking. They raise questions that waking life rarely forces us to consider directly. How do we know, in any given moment, that we are experiencing things exactly as they are? There is, within the study of lucid dreaming, a consistent finding that is easy to overlook. Most people who learn to lucid dream do not do so primarily to control their dreams. In surveys of lucid dreamers about their motivations, the most commonly cited reasons are curiosity about the nature of consciousness, the desire for exploration in a space without physical consequence, and, most tenderly, the desire to encounter people they miss, people who are no longer in their waking lives. The dreaming mind, made conscious, becomes a place for reunion. Sleep researchers have noted that the frequency of lucid dreaming naturally increases during periods of psychological intensity, particularly when a person is working through difficult emotional content. This appears to be related to the brain's increased production of vivid, emotionally rich dreams during such periods, which provide more opportunities for the metacognitive awareness that triggers lucidity. The brain, it seems, makes its most elaborate and self-aware dreams precisely when it has the most to process. Children between the ages of 5 and 10 appear to have particularly high rates of spontaneous lucid dreaming, though research with this age group is methodologically careful. Parents and early childhood researchers have noted that young children often describe their dreams with a fluency and naturalness about the awareness of dreaming that older dreamers tend to lose. Some developmental researchers speculate that the boundary between waking and dreaming cognition may be more permeable in early childhood, and that what we call lucid dreaming may be closer to the original, unpartitioned state of the young mind. There are individual differences in the brain that appear to relate to ease with lucid dreaming. Neuroimaging studies have found that people who report frequent lucid dreaming tend to have greater volume and gray matter density in the anterior prefrontal cortex compared to non-lucid dreamers. This structural difference suggests that the capacity for lucid dreaming may have a partial neurological basis, that some brains are simply better provisioned for the self-monitoring that lucidity requires. Lucid dreaming also appears to be more common in people who score highly on measures of psychological absorption. The tendency to become deeply and fully immersed in imaginative and sensory experience. Absorption is associated with openness to experience, creativity, and susceptibility to hypnosis. There seems to be a quality of mind that moves easily between different levels and textures of experience. And this quality appears in the lucid dreamer, the meditator, the creative artist, and the person who cries at music when no one is watching. The most recent neuroimaging work on lucid dreaming, using high-resolution brain scanning, has begun to map the neural transition that occurs at the moment of lucidity onset inside a dream. Researchers have identified patterns of activity that appear to build gradually, over seconds, before the dreamer becomes aware they are dreaming. The prefrontal surge does not arrive instantaneously. It gathers, and then, at a threshold, awareness opens. The brain, in that transition, is making something of itself. And so, the picture comes into focus. Lucid dreaming ends with excitement, not because excitement is incompatible with consciousness, but because the particular form of consciousness that a dreaming brain can sustain is one built on stillness, not the stillness of absence. The stillness of presence so full, it has no need to reach forward. When the dreamer can meet the beauty and strangeness of the dream world with a calm that does not diminish what it sees, that is when the dream holds. And that, at the edge of this journey, is beginning to feel like more than a lesson about dreaming. You might be feeling tired now. That's perfectly fine. Breathe slowly. Feel the cycles. Sleep comes and goes in waves through the night. Your body rises and descends through stages, through rest, through dreaming, through stillness, like the tide that never asks permission, never announces itself, simply arrives and recedes. Like your breath, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. A small cycle within the body's larger turning. You don't need to hold on to any of this. Let everything unfold in its perfect order. We're almost there now. Sleep is not one thing. It is a cycle, and within that cycle, the dreaming mind finds its home at the edges, in the lightest, most awake, adjacent regions of sleep. Lucid, dreaming, lives in that liminal space. Not fully awake, not fully unaware, but somewhere between, where consciousness holds its thinnest and most delicate form, like the last light before a room goes completely dark. Every night, the body moves through sleep in the same direction, deeper and deeper into rest, and then slowly back. The first REM period of the night lasts only a few minutes. By the final cycle, near morning, REM can last 45 minutes or more. The dreaming mind grows bolder through the night, and the most aware dreams come when morning is closest and rest has done its deepest, quietest work. The transition into a lucid dream is described by those who have experienced it as a kind of clicking into focus. The dream is happening. And then, with no announcement, a light switches on. The scene is the same. The story continues. But behind the dreamer's eyes, something knows. A gentle knowing, soft and clear as winter air, arriving without effort. When the lucid dream is allowed to continue, when the dreamer moves through it with calm attention rather than excitement, time inside the dream seems to settle. The narrative steadies. The colors hold. The world, built from memory and imagination, becomes something you could almost trust, almost believe in, almost call home, just for the duration of a night. In the research literature, there is a phrase that reappears across studies and across decades: the stable lucid dream. Researchers use it to describe the state that experienced lucid dreamers can reach and maintain. Stable. The word carries a quality that most sleep words do not. Not deep, not vivid, not long. Stable. As though the dreaming mind, at its most practiced, becomes something you can simply stand inside. The techniques that stabilize lucid dreams: spinning, touching surfaces, looking at the hands, breathing slowly, all involve directing attention toward the physical and sensory reality of the dream world, rather than toward the idea of the dream. They are, in essence, mindfulness practices translated into the dreaming state. Presence, applied to what the hands feel, what the air tastes like, what the light is doing in this particular corner of the world the dreaming mind invented. There is something worth noticing in the fact that the dreaming mind can be taught to be calmer, not by removing experience, but by deepening the quality of attention brought to it. The brain that can hold a lucid dream without excitement waking it is a brain that has learned something about itself, something that does not disappear when the dream ends. Researchers who study long-term lucid dreamers have found traces of that learning in waking life. Greater self-awareness, greater equanimity in the face of intensity, a more flexible relationship to experience itself, as though the nighttime practice of meeting extraordinary things with calm had slowly, over time, carried gently into the day. Outside the window tonight, somewhere above the softened sky, there are stars whose light has traveled for thousands of years to reach this moment. Inside your mind, as you lie here, the same brain that made language and music and mathematics is quietly, faithfully, preparing to dream. Both of these things are happening right now. The universe and your sleeping mind, doing their oldest, most unhurried work. The question that began this journey was a small one. Why does excitement end a lucid dream? But the answer is larger than the question, because the dreaming mind teaches us that certain things can only be entered slowly. That awareness, in its most refined form, is not grasping, it is receiving, not rushing toward, it is resting within. And this is not only true of dreams. Certain states of waking consciousness follow the same pattern. Deep reading, absorption in music, the particular quality of attention that arises at the edge of understanding something new. All of these require the same internal condition, an arousal that is high enough to remain present and low enough to remain still. The dreaming mind does not judge the dreamer who wakes. It simply begins again. Every night, the preparation for dreaming restarts with the first descent into sleep. Every night, there is another chance for awareness to flicker on inside the story. The dream is patient. It waits, without any sense of urgency, without any sense of loss. For most of human history, sleep was not understood as a complex biological process. It was simply the dark that came each night. Now we know it as a place of restoration, neural repair, emotional regulation, memory consolidation, cellular renewal. The dreaming portions of sleep are not separate from this work. They are woven through the center of it, doing their most elaborate and least visible task. The fact that awareness can exist inside a dream, that the brain can monitor its own dreaming, is not a curiosity at the edge of science. It is a window into what consciousness is, stripped of external input, still present, still watching, still itself, even when the world that surrounds it was built from within, even then. And yet, the most lucid dream ends. The most practiced dreamer wakes. The most stable dream world dissolves into the grey ceiling of a morning room. This is not failure. It is simply the nature of the state. Everything that arises in sleep eventually passes. Clarity, like all things in the night, is temporary. And perhaps that is what makes it worth finding. There are researchers who believe that the next horizon in lucid dreaming is not inducing it more often, but understanding what it reveals about consciousness more broadly. If a brain can be aware of its own dreaming, what else is it silently aware of? In waking, that we have not yet found a way to measure, the study of lucid dreaming is, in this sense, a study of the edges of self-knowledge. Some of the most peaceful states reported in human experience are described in exactly the terms that define a stable, lucid dream. Vast awareness, soft attention, a sense of presence that is open and unhurried. Whether experienced in meditation, in prayer, in certain moments of natural beauty, or inside a quiet and held dream, the description points towards something similar, a mind that is fully present, fully aware, and fully at rest. Tonight, your body is descending. The breath is slowing. The thoughts are becoming less sequential, more associative, more dreamlike. The boundary between what you meant to think and what simply appeared is growing softer. This is the beginning of the process that, if undisturbed, will carry you into the same state that every lucid dream requires, the sleeping mind, ready and open, waiting for awareness to find it. The ancient practice of setting an intention before sleep, of asking the mind to hold a question or a wish through the night, is one of the oldest human behaviors related to dreaming. It predates neuroscience by millennia, and yet it describes something the neuroscience confirms, that the brain, even in sleep, continues to work with what it was given before it closed its eyes. The intention you carry into sleep is not abandoned. It is carried quietly forward. The last fact of tonight's journey is not a discovery. It is a recognition. The brain you have, the one that has been reading and receiving and beginning to drift, is the same brain that will dream tonight. It will construct entire worlds. It will cast the people you love in stories you did not plan. It will process what today left unfinished, and file what this evening gave you, and prepare something new, all while you are utterly still, all while you believe you are doing nothing at all. And so, our quiet journey through the dreaming mind comes to a gentle close. We began where all awareness begins, in a brain curious enough to ask why, and awake enough, even in sleep, to notice. We traced the thin neural balance between REM stillness and the excitement that tips it. We discovered that the most aware dreams are sustained not by effort, but by something closer to its opposite. A calm, so complete, it leaves room for everything. From the first flickering of lucid recognition inside a sleeping mind, to the interactive dreaming experiments in which a researcher's question arrived as a voice from somewhere inside the dream, to the ancient Tibetan practice of dream yoga that described this same awareness centuries before there were laboratories to measure it. We have wandered through one of the most intimate sciences in existence, the science of being aware of your own awareness, the science of the watcher watching itself. Dreaming reminds us that the mind does not stop when we do. Much of its most essential work happens in silence, in the dark, in a place we cannot follow with waking attention. It reveals something about the nature of consciousness that no waking hour can quite teach. That awareness, at its quietest, is not smaller than awareness at its most alert. It is simply more still, and in that stillness, something holds that cannot hold in the noise. In these final minutes, take the deepest breath you can. As deep as possible, think about unity. Of every dreamer tonight who has closed their eyes and found something waiting for them inside. You are not dreaming alone. Right now, in beds and rooms and quiet corners of the world, minds are releasing the day and opening to whatever the night will bring. You are part of that gentle, planetary letting go. Think about the question that began this journey. What happens when excitement dissolves into stillness inside a dream? Let your entire being dissolve into the gentle darkness now, into the soft gravity pulling you into sleep. No boundaries left, no edges between where you are and where the dream will begin. Only peace, only the breath, only the quiet that your particular kind of mind has been searching for all day. Prepare for deep sleep. Only peace. This quiet journey through the dreaming mind found its way here, and perhaps it can find its way to one more person who is searching in the dark tonight. A gentle subscribe or share could be the thing that leads them here. One sleepy soul at a time. One quiet tap. But there's no need to do anything now. Nothing at all. You've traveled far tonight. Not across miles, but inward, through the corridors of a sleeping mind that knows more than it lets on, and has been waiting all along. For this, you can allow these thoughts of dreaming to fade now, like the last image of a dream at the moment of waking, present, then softer, then simply part of everything that was, leaving only the quiet, unheld, calm behind. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body feel heavier, as if a gentle and patient gravity has found you here and is simply holding you. If sleep comes, let it carry you, the way awareness dissolves into dreaming, not falling, not pushed, but arriving into a realm where time and weight no longer matter. If your eyes are still open, the next video is waiting for you. ready to continue the journey. But if they're closed, stay there. Stay in the darkness that feels safe and warm. Tomorrow, the dreaming mind will still be ready. The question of what lies inside a sleeping awareness will still be waiting, patient and unhurried, as it has always been. But tonight belongs to stillness. Rest well, sleepy soul, and remember, the most aware place you have ever been may be waiting for you in the dark. Good night.